Does it work? So hello everyone. Thanks for being here for this media lunch on ADB's policies and projects. I'm very glad that we have three brilliant experts with us here that I will introduce very briefly before they will hold short presentations and before we can come to any questions. First, this will be Himantha Vitanage of a forum on ADB, so an NGO forum working for a very long time on ADB's safeguards policies and monitoring projects and the process of the project. Then we have with us Wu Tiang of Equitable Cambodia, who's an advocate for land rights, and he's also the executive director of this organization. And we have Stephanie Fried, welcome, of the Ulu Foundation USA, who's an advocate on like safeguards policies concerning environment and human rights. And maybe you could introduce yourself more specifically at the start of your presentations. And so let's begin with Himantha Vitanage, who wants to tell us something about the trends concerning ADB safeguards and also planetary limits.
Hello everyone, I'm Hemant Vitanage from Sri Lanka. I'm the international convener of the NGO Forum on ADB. Here we are in Frankfurt attending the 49th annual meeting of the Asian Development Bank. NGO Forum on ADB started its work in 1992, and it has more than 250 civil society organizations, communities, and the grassroots organizations from all over Asia, Europe, and USA. And we monitor the Asian Development Bank funded projects, policies, and assist local communities to bring their grievances to the Asian Development Bank. At the same time, we are monitoring the policy changes, and we push for the better policies, including the social and environmental safeguards. We are coming from a region with more than 750 million people still live under the poverty line, and in the past several years we have witnessed that the rich and poor disparities are getting higher. In the past 20 years, at least more than 20% of the inequality has been seen in our part. At the same time, the Asian Development Bank is pushing for private sector involvement, mega infrastructure, and same time the local communities, they are missing minimal infrastructure, education, health, the roads, which is necessary for their day-to-day living. Unfortunately, large-scale infrastructure has brought a lot of problems, negative impacts to the local communities, their economies, their environment, and also their livelihoods. So at the same time, when they are fighting against this unnecessary infrastructure, these countries pressure them and sometimes send the police, and they lose their human rights, and the governments do the human right violations, and sometimes the people lose their life. In the recent past, we have seen this is happening in Bangladesh, and some of the communities have lost their lives because of fighting against this environmental damage. So this also includes the destruction of forest, biodiversity, and even in coastal areas and the river systems. This kind of aggressive development activities has really increased the greenhouse gas emissions. So they are making a lot of irreparable damage to the local communities, and also especially the indigenous people are very much suffered from this kind of infrastructure. Uh, and also the Asian Development Bank is responsible for supporting coal power in the past several decades. And so we know that um, the world carbon emission has increased rapidly in the last 50 years, which has not seen in the last 650,000 years. Um, and it is the whole world is demanding that we should keep the temperature rise below 1.5 degree, but unfortunately Asian Development Bank still support the coal power plants. And you may know that already since 2007 US dollar 59 billion public financing has gone for various development projects, various coal power projects in all over the world, and Asian Development Bank is one of them. In the recent times, we have identified this Tata Mundra coal power plant in India is really damaging the local communities. You can see the impacts in this picture and how the poor people are suffering. And this is a US dollar 4,140 million project, which is happening in India, in Gujarat, and this has already displaced 3 communities, and they have lost their homes to give way to the coal power plant. And the fishermen groups, the minority fishermen groups, have already lost their livelihood because of this coal power plant, and they were displaced, and this is a human right violation. At the same time, the carbon dioxide emission is really high, and this would be about two-thirds, one India's third largest emitter of the greenhouse gases. Um, I think emitting 30,796 million tons per year. So this is a picture from Cambodia. Our friends will share the story. At the same time, the ADB has some policies, but unfortunately, the public communication policy does not give enough information to the local communities when they are bringing those bad mega infrastructure projects. So the it is very clear that we are talking about social and environmental safeguards at the Asian Development Bank. Unfortunately, these social and environmental safeguards have not brought any safeguards to the local communities. In fact, due to the increase of the damage to the environment, the world is really getting into a very bad shape, and environmentally harmful projects are happening everywhere, and we have gone beyond the planetary limits. Uh, Climate change is one of them, deforestation, and the water crisis, food crisis. Many of them are result of this mega development by the Asian Development Bank. So in the past several years, we have noticed that at least 58,300 families have been displaced in 13 countries in the last 5 years of the ADB investments. So these kind of mega scale projects are really damaging the social and environmental situation in the communities. And we believe that mega infrastructure is really not necessary for the local communities. Local communities are demanding simple infrastructure, which provide them good health, good education, good living conditions, good housing. These are the things that the Asian Development Bank, as a multilateral bank, as a public bank, should meet. Instead, Asian Development Bank at the moment supporting big private companies under the public-private partnerships, and they are investing on the companies, and the greedy companies are not really providing the safeguards. So this is a problem we see everywhere in Asia, and I hope that the communities and also the governments should act together and to provide necessary social environmental safeguards, at the same time have the economy good enough for the people to live and not to satisfy these big corporations through the public funding. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Samantha. Thank you very much. Maybe we can come to any kind of questions also via the digital way later on. Thank you for sharing with us this really shocking results and information on the impacts of mega infrastructure projects. We will come to this issue later with a bit more detail, with more insights on different examples of projects, and can now move on to Wuti Yang, who wants to tell us a bit about the railway project of ADB in Cambodia and the impacts of this. And this will this is a very good example of what's kind of changes brought and also bad changes by these projects.
Thank you very much, Moritz, and good afternoon, everyone. And my pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me to join this press conference. I'm here together with the one community representative that affected by the railway project. So we're here for the annual meeting. So if you have any questions through online, we can discuss further. So urgewald Cambodia is a local organization working in Cambodia, and one of the projects that we have been monitoring for the last 6 months, the railway project that funded by the Asian Development Bank. And these projects receive a total of more than 100 million, and about 84 million come from the Asian Development Bank. And so in Cambodia, we have a very complicated history, because we have gone through many wars in the past decades, and people have lived in different parts of the country. But after the war is over, people trying to move to the city and live on the empty parts of the city, and that's why many people come to live along the railway tracks. And at the time, there was a policy that so people can live without any restriction by the government. So these projects affected more than 4,000 families, and mostly in Phnom Penh and Poi Phet. So the project runs through Phnom Penh and connect to the Poi Phet, the Thai borders, and the seaport in Sihanoukville. We see because of these rehabilitation projects, we see many people required to move to a resettlement site. And from the beginning, we were engaging with the government and the Cambodian government, the ADB, of course, about the possible human rights violations. We asked them to consult with the people and the stakeholder involved, to make sure that the ADB policy are compliant. But at the time, ADB was not listened to us, and they come up with the resettlement policy that we know that it's not able to uphold the rights of the people, or make the people better off, as the ADB policy stated. And at the time, we trying to warn ADB that if you go ahead and approve this plan, people will be suffering as a result of this project. they won't listen, and in 2010 they started to move people in Poipet and Battambang. At the time, we monitor the resettlement process, and we see at the resettlement site there's no uh, infrastructure or basic services, and people end up, impoverished because of this project. And even the cleaning water, the clean water, they don't have at the resettlement site. So people have to move, go to get water far away. And at the time, two children were drowned and dead because of this project. And the same situations happen in other resettlement sites as well, as you can see in this picture. So when people are resettled, there's no infrastructure at all, or even basic services. And the same problem happened in Phnom Penh, in Poipet, in Battambang, and Sinoville. So that's why we decided to, to again engage with the Asian Development Bank office in Cambodia, informing them about the situations, but still they very slow and not responding to the people complaint. Um, be- After many years of engaging, then we in the community decided to file the complaint to the ADB accountability mechanism. First, we started with the OSPS, and 150 family filed the complaint to the OSPS. But people was not happy with the process because they could not solve the systemic problem or the policy violation. They could only address small issue. People decided to go using another process, which called comply and review panel. So in 2013, the COP investigated the case, and found that the bank has breached their own policy, and the COP has produce a very comprehensive report and recommendation and submit to the board. And the board adopt the recommendation for the bank to address this issue. Um, we are now at the stage that the bank management have to really implement the recommendation. But we see because of the lack of the cooperation by the Cambodian government and the lack of oversight by the Asian Development uh, Bank, the board, we see the situations remain the same, um, and people are still, living in a very bad situation. So, from time to time they become worse in living situation. So we here again, we tried many years already engaging with the Asian Development Bank, the board, and still the situation has not really much changed on the ground. And today, like yesterday, our community representative, talked to directly to the president of the Asian Development Bank, and in response again, he said he will try to fix this situation. And we also meeting with a few board director, the German board director, the US board director. Again, we raising the same problem, and again they say the same thing. They will follow up on the situation, but they really put the blame on the Cambodian government that because the government is not cooperating with the bank, so they can't really do much. For us, this is really irresponsible because the bank has their own policy to follow, and now people are suffering. So the bank has the responsibility to fix this issue, and we continue to hold the bank accountable until the problem is solved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vuti. Yeah, another project with really devastating effects, and it's very good that you keep on working on this and try to approach the people who might bring change to the ADB's policy. Let's move on now to Stephanie Fried, who has brought us a new report on also on infrastructure finance with examples and experiences from Indonesia. So this is really like brand new, and so we are very especially interested in the results, and hope that it will work with the projector as well.
The technology is also brand new.
Seems like this. By the way, I think I forgot to introduce myself. I'm working for urgewald, and we're also around here with some experts on safeguards and human rights safeguards policies. Now it seems to work.
Yeah. No.
So that's a presentation.
Slideshow.
It's not working.
There we have it. So Stephanie.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity. The ULU Foundation essentially works to monitor financial flows. And we also pay special attention to forests and forest peoples and communities that are dependent upon forests. What I'd like to do today is to present a new report that is being launched by colleagues in Indonesia. There are 12 Indonesian organizations who work to put this together. And you can see their names appear, including Ecological Justice, ILRC, Tok Walhi, Indonesian Corruption Watch, ELSAM, Debt Watch, and Center for Indonesian Taxation Analysis, Biotani, Japa, and Pusaka. The reason it's important to know who these organizations are is a wide range: tax experts, farm pesticide experts, human rights, corruption experts, because and environmental experts, and attorneys, and policy people, and folks that are focused on debt and indigenous rights. The issues that we're dealing with cross-cut so many different concerns. We'll look very briefly at Indonesia in the context of the ADB. So the ADB has provided over $31 billion in loans for Indonesia since 1966. And they divide up these loans. You can see they're in various categories: in agriculture, energy. But what's quite interesting is when you look at the success rates of the ADB project, this is according to their own self-report, the success rates between 2005 and 2015 range from actually 0% success, 25%, to a few 100%, with an average over the past decade of 64% success rate. If you're a student in a school, a grade of 64 is not passing, it's a failing grade. And these are self-assessments. All right, so we're looking at the context of increased infrastructure finance. We have the launch of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and that launch has pushed the other banks, including the World Bank and the IFC and the ADB, to race to increase their commitment for infrastructure funding, and also to use what are called financial intermediaries. So instead of funding a dam directly or funding a road through a rainforest, you fund a bank or a private equity fund or another intermediary body, and then that thing does the individual project funding. So it's much harder to track, it's much harder to trace. At the same time, we see decreasing civil society space. So there are changes in laws, including laws specifically pertaining to NGOs in countries such as Indonesia and China, etc. At the same time, we see increasing abuses of legal systems. So to raise slander and libel charges to silence civil society members who dare to speak out about corruption in different countries, as well as extrajudicial measures, including attacks and false imprisonment and killings. When we look at infrastructure, infrastructure is of vital importance for development. However, large-scale infrastructure projects, if developed without careful attention to impacts on the environment and communities, can carry severe risks to these communities. That includes widespread impoverishment, permanent loss of livelihood, violent conflicts, militarization, and human rights violations. And some of the things that we see are loss of access to land. So in this picture, this is a farmer who can no longer access his fields or his water. There's also the threat of irreversible environmental damage, including forest destruction and the destruction of biodiversity, coastal areas, river systems, etc. There are specific impacts upon women as well, with large-scale infrastructure projects. This includes, as with men, you eliminate men and women's farming and fishing livelihoods. But the employment that's offered in these construction and office jobs is almost exclusively limited to men. This tends to increase women's dependence on men and often drives women and girls into sex work out of economic desperation. And this is a photograph of a woman looking at her fields that have been seized for a power plant project. If you attend meetings of investors in infrastructure finance, one of the hot topics of the day is land acquisition. How can we get land from our projects? It's very difficult for a project proponent who wants to build a dam or a power plant to get land. From the farmer's point of view, they see their lands being seized increasingly, and they face tremendous problems of hanging on to their own land. So we're looking at this in an overall context of an increase in infrastructure finance, the use of these opaque financial intermediaries, and how difficult it is to apply the safeguards that we heard Ruthie talk about. How difficult. You've seen this project here, which has gone on for the better part of a decade, and it's still difficult to get the safeguards applied, and that's to a direct project. If the project is hidden under a financial intermediary, it's even more difficult to get the safeguards applied. We also see, obviously, the issue of land rights, the increasing co-finance with the launch of the Asian Infrastructure Bank, which is going to be working with and co-financing projects with the ADB and the AIIB. There are lots of questions about how the safeguards will be implemented. There's also an increasing level of sophistication of fake consultations, because consultations are required on paper by the banks, and so they need to show that they've done them. So there's an increasing sophistication of that. I'm going to talk very briefly about some of the Indonesian cases. And really, for the details, I suggest you try to download this document. It's online at www.mitrahukum.org, mitrahukum.org, and I'm sure there'll be a tagline at the bottom of this presentation to show you how to reach that. Indonesia has a national plan to develop infrastructure. That's normal. Their plan involves more than 40 coal power plants, 40 geothermal plants, which are likely to be in forested areas, mega hydropower projects, nuclear plants, potentially even a floating nuclear plant, and thousands of kilometers of roads and or railways through biodiversity-rich forested areas of Kalimantan, Sumatra, Papua, and elsewhere. And of course, these forests are inhabited by indigenous and other forest-dwelling communities. This plan has very slowly been implemented, but now the President of Indonesia has announced that he wants to work very closely with the Asian Development Bank, the World Bank Group, as well as the AIIB to receive large amounts of funding to jumpstart this. What this report covers is a quick look at 5 different projects. Financial intermediaries, funds, and projects for infrastructure. They're all infrastructure efforts in Indonesia. 2 of them already exist. 2 of them are planned, and 1 is a trust fund. I'm not going to go into all the details of these projects. I'll pick 1, 1.5 perhaps. But these projects, the reason it's very difficult to even be able to talk about these projects because there's a lack of public information. There's conflicting public information. Different websites have different parts of the story, and sometimes the information conflicts. If we look at the first one, Indonesia Infrastructure Finance, this was born out of a World Bank supported planning process. But the equity in this project, in this company, is held by the Asian Development Bank, by the World Bank's IFC, by Germany's DEG. Those 3 public entities together hold more than half of the equity. So even though this is supposedly a non-bank private fund, it is publicly held by these international entities. If we look at PT Indonesian Infrastructure Finance, they have a website. The ownership structure is as follows. So you can see there is an entity called SMI. This is wholly owned, Sarana Multi-Infrastructure. It's wholly owned by the Indonesian government from the finance ministry. It owns 30% share. The ADB has a 19.99% equity holding. The IFC has a 19.99%, and DEG has less, and that's the Sumitomo Bank. So it's majority publicly held. The ADB's role, since we're here with the ADB's annual meeting, was as a founding shareholder with an investment of about 40 million. It was the ADB's first equity investment in one of these types of creatures in Indonesia. They then made a loan, a $100 million loan, to this entity on the premise that this entity would put the money directly into here. So they have direct equity, but they also funded the Indonesian government body that then provided the funds to run this. The ADB still has a relationship with SMI in that it signed last year another MOU to help speed up the access and the acceleration of PPP, public-private partnership projects in Indonesia. So this is very much an ongoing current relationship. Indonesian groups have been requesting for quite some time lists of what sub-projects have been funded, will be funded, what projects are in the pipeline, because these projects started in 2009, but there really was no public data, any kind of detail on it. The rationale for the involvement of the banks in these projects was to help them develop an operations manual describing how they would meet all of their safeguards requirements, how they would do environmental and social assessment. These projects, again, two of them have run since 2009, and there are still no operations manual made public. So nobody knows, no member of the Indonesian public or the global public can see how they're supposed to be operating. The Indonesian groups have requested reports of public consultations. They've requested information on how they've complied with the ADB safeguard standards and information on plans for co-finance with the AIIB. And again, very little information has been made public. There are problems with risk categorization. These are high-risk projects. The World Bank has even flagged that there's a very high risk of corruption. And according to the World Bank, this is corruption driven not only by the government, but also by the contractors, consultants, etc., and the structure of the industry itself. But there's, again, no environmental impact assessments are made public prior to appraisal or approval of these projects. Recently, after the Indonesian groups asked questions, some older environmental assessments were posted online, and that's a good first step. But none of the projects in the pipeline and none of the assessments are posted online for public comment prior to decision making. And again, there's a lack of public consultation. Let me see. Another quick example, there's another fund called the Indonesian Infrastructure Guarantee Fund. It's all alphabet soup. These projects all sound the same. But this fund is quite important. This was set up by the World Bank to be the sole institution, the only single window for appraising, structuring, and processing all guarantees for public-private projects, public-private PPP projects in Indonesia. And according to the website for this project, the World Bank has provided a guarantee facility of almost $500 million US for these guarantees. So what this means is that any public-private partnership project that's coming into Indonesia would use this mysterious fund for its guarantee. And again, the same problems as with the other fund are found with this fund. The first guarantee that was made by this Indonesian Guarantee Fund was for two highly controversial 1,000-megawatt coal-fired power plants, which is Southeast Asia's largest coal-fired power plant project located in Java and Batam Regency. It's estimated that these plants will emit over 10 million tons of carbon dioxide per year, approximately 2.6% of all of Indonesia's emissions, of annual emissions. The guarantee hasn't been activated yet because of conflicts over land and the lack of what's called financial closure. In other words, the deal is not yet closed. It's been delayed for years and years and years. by farmers who have been protesting the seizure of their lands for power plant construction. I'm almost out of time now, but I'll just wrap this up by saying the banks are in these projects together. So not only is the Asian Development Bank in this, but the World Bank Group's IFC is in this, and they claim that this coal project is a success story. In this guarantee Indonesian Guarantee Risk Fund, they assess risk. They tell their clients what's high risk and low risk. And they provided an assessment that says that if lands are owned by indigenous peoples, or if they're forest lands, or if they're lands where farmers don't have land certificates and proof of ownership, these lands are low risk and easy to acquire. In Indonesia, most of the farmers do not have proof of land ownership. So this entity is giving a signal to all of the investors that go ahead, seize lands from indigenous people, seize forests, and this is an easy, low risk way of getting land. This is not in accordance at all of the way that the ADB and the World Bank and the IFC address indigenous people's rights or forest rights or land rights. So it seems that they're funding these entities, but there's very little control. Again, I think that you can read the report, which the report has very interesting contributions from our Indonesian colleagues of the way the invitations and the public consultations have been faked, including with pictures posted online and all sorts of documents. So in the end, it's clear that the ADB and the other multilateral development banks have failed to implement proper due diligence. They have not done their job in terms of putting the safeguards in place, and that the call is that until and unless the problems in these existing funds and programs have been solved and remedied, no further support should be provided for similar projects in the pipeline, and that there is a call for support, for a halt to support for the guarantee for the large Batam coal-fired power plants, given the human rights violations and the violations of environmental and social safeguards. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Stephanie. Also, that you end up with such clear demands, because they show where this process really needs to lead to. And having said this, I want to invite you to ask any questions concerning the contents and be it the report or the concrete examples. Oops.
Yeah, sorry. There's one question regarding the guarantee fund. To be clear about who pays what in the end. So if one of the infrastructure projects goes into default and the World Bank steps in with the guarantee fund, does it mean that the World Bank is paying in the end, or who is it?
Do you want a direct answer, or do we collect questions, or how do you?
So I would say if there are different questions on the same issue, then please just raise them. Otherwise, I would ask you to answer directly.
The guarantee fund is actually a little bit complicated. So the World Bank helped set it up and has had a project to strengthen the guarantee fund. On the fund's website, the fund itself claims that it has almost $500 million of a bank guarantee facility available to it. This data is not found on any World Bank website, but it's found on the fund's website. Bank staff have still not been able to answer details of how that works. There are two types of guarantees. There are guarantees funded by the bank itself directly, so the bank can fund a project. There are guarantees funded only by the guarantee fund, not drawing on World Bank money. In the case of this power plant, the power plant is not drawing on World Bank funds for this guarantee. However, the entire premise of the World Bank loan in the first place to set this up was to develop an operations manual that mandates compliance with World Bank safeguard standards. That manual is still secret. It's crystal clear that the evaluation of indigenous lands or forest lands as easy and low risk for seizing is not in compliance with the World Bank operations manual. So there are lots of questions. These financial intermediaries are complex and opaque And the bank itself is not really used to answering about the details. It's very hard to bring what we find with these particular projects. They seem to be administered out of the regional office, so like Singapore and Jakarta. At the headquarters in Washington, they don't seem to have very much information at all about these projects. So it's very much an open question, a question in play.
Cool.
Yes, I have a question for Wudi Yang. How would you respond to the claims of the ADB that actually the ADB and the government of Cambodia have made, several large payments to the affected communities, and have begun addressing at least, some of these issues?
I think the response was not satisfied by us or the communities, because they keep saying this all the time, that the bank has tried to put both financial and technical support to the Cambodian government, especially in the railway project. But we see because this project is so big and the impacts just so bad on the ground. It involves thousands of families, and when you displace people with no infrastructures, no job, then whatever money you put into these projects, it's not gonna be able to have the people. So we see the ADB and the government pay 2 times to the affected people, but the money is not that much. Each family receive just a few hundred US dollars. So they will just spend within a few months, and then they will be hungry again. So what we are calling is like the program, that need to be in place, and that program need to be functioned, so that people can restore the livelihood, not just relying on small compensations from time to time. Uh, Now again, they're going to pay for the loss of income, and they calculate that each family will receive 25 US dollars per month, and pay up to 6 months. So this money is very low, like $25 cannot feed the whole family for a whole month. So again, we demand that they have to put the program in place to ensure that people livelihood are restored, and they at the resettlement side they need to be adequate infrastructure and services.
Stephanie?
I have a question for my fellow panelists because I was very interested in your presentation. We've heard from Ruthie the issues with the compensation and the approach to resettlement under Cambodia's country system or Cambodia's national system, which doesn't seem to be in accordance with what requirements would be to have people have the same level of livelihood. I'm wondering, from your experience in Sri Lanka, with Sri Lanka's country system, since you've been an attorney who's worked for decades on improving laws and enforcing laws in your own country, what do you think about the push now for the use of national legislation, the use of country systems by the ADB, the AIIB, and the World Bank?
Actually, in Sri Lankan situation, so we brought even an inspection panel case in 2005 to the Asian Development Bank, because the Southern Transport Development Project, the compensation was not adequate, and the compensation was not paid, and there were many other allegations. What we found that certain times the country laws are implementing properly, although we have a very good legal system in Sri Lanka, but most of the time the legal implementation is very, very weak. So and also some of the projects are coming under 2-3 different legislations, and there's a confusion among the agencies as well. So at the very initial, Asian Development Bank supported us to have a resettlement policy in Sri Lanka. So this resettlement policy only worked for two projects funded by the Asian Development Bank. Since then, it was not supported or it was not enforced. The very simple reason is that Asian Development Bank the resettlement policy says that the people have to receive the market rate. So to get the market rate, you have to have a proper valuation. So if you do the proper valuation, then the compensation cost is very, very high. And the Sri Lankan government was not ready to pay this compensation. So because of that, they do not implement this resettlement policy now, and also they violate all the environmental laws within Sri Lanka. So ADB policy is a better one at the moment compared to many other places, many other banks, but the enforcement is very, very little, and also it is not matching with the country regulations. So in that case, I think the country system is not going to work in most of our countries, because most countries are supporting weakening legislation to support the private sector. So this is what is happening all over Asia. I think even under the new development, new Euro Asia, the project, the connecting one road, one belt project is going to support the private sector involvement again and again. So this will be the situation across the Asia. So this is the fear in the NGO forum we have.
Yeah, one more question. As we are in Germany at the ADB AGM, and Germany as a host country is promoting sustainability a lot at this conference. What are you expecting from Germany? You know, Germany is involved in Indonesia, as we heard from Stephanie. Germany is a big shareholder in all multilateral banks. So what do you expect from German, or what do you demand, better say, from German government and from German parliament?
Shall we start over here and move?
Yeah.
I think, in my opinion, in this morning, the meeting with the AIIB president, he was very clear that in the AIIB operations, they are not looking for the money comes from the European countries, but the good governance, the legislations, the standards. So those are some of those expectations. I think the EU has shown this sort of good governance promotion all across our countries, and I think it is a good way that as the civil society organization we expect the same from the German government and also the European Union to ensure that local people in our countries in the Asia and the Pacific regions have the same sort of standards like the European countries, European citizens are enjoying. So to make sure that, so you have to have the same legislation, equal opportunities, equal standards, and the proper implementation. I think if the German government and the European Union can push this through the Asian Development Bank and even with the AIIB, I think that will be the best we can ask from this region.
Yeah, this morning I met with the German ED, just to follow up on the case. So not just the German ED, but also other, ED admitted that this, project especially is a failure. So we demand, because in the European ED, they're very clear about the safeguard about the human rights. So again, we demand them to monitor the situation on the ground and to ensure that the policies is applied and respected. And in this situation, they said we can't force Cambodian government to work with us or to get loan even from us to fix this problem. So this is unacceptable because we calling them to stop providing loan if you cannot force the government to do the right thing. And why you keep providing loan? So my demand is that you have to make sure that the policy apply, and you have to make sure that the human right of the people on the ground especially are respected, and or provide fair and just compensations. And if the government, especially the government in Cambodia, we have a long history of not respecting human rights and committing violence. So you can't expect that they do a right thing. So they have to take firm action on that.
Well, I couldn't say anything more eloquent than what our two speakers have already said. They've captured exactly what I would say. I would only add that Germany has shown tremendous leadership in the development of a human rights policy, which really has been something that other countries have looked towards, and we would hope that that policy is strengthened and actually implemented. And I guess the value added, of course, of Germany's participation, as well as Europe and the United States, must be on ensuring consultation and participation. And as the infrastructure investments go ahead and through these opaque financial intermediaries, it's absolutely vital that these be made open and transparent with full public participation, so we do not end up constantly repeating these horror stories.
I've now another question on your part, Stephanie, concerning, our work, were there different contributions concerning this question? Then I have another question concerning the transparency issue here you were talking about, concerning financial intermediaries. So there seems to be really astonishing lack of information about these public funded projects. Even though, what do you think are the best ways of doing research on it? So this might be also a question that journalists are interested about, how to do research on these kind of partners in development finance,
Well, one thing, I would look forward to the release of the Panama Papers database, because you never know, you might very well find some links in there. I think that what we're seeing is, for the various multilateral development banks, they do have lists of the projects that they're funding. So you'll find the name of the project on the website of the ADB or the World Bank or the IFC. If you drill down, there are often supporting documents, but again, it's very opaque and very difficult to find the lists. You have to look, in the case of Indonesia, there really was no data provided, but after the Indonesian group started asking questions, suddenly lists of projects that had already been funded showed up on the websites of the companies, so not the websites of the banks. But it's a massively difficult thing, and it should not be this difficult. This is public money, it's taxpayers' money, you're paying for these. And they're using your money to potentially harm communities like your community. And it's beyond belief that it is this difficult, because again, these are public funds. And when you look at, for example, the Indonesian infrastructure finance, that is majority publicly held. Equity is majority publicly held equity. And we see these models as being used increasingly. So your question is absolutely correct. The answer is that currently it's very difficult, but the answer is also that this absolutely needs to change. And perhaps some of the things that are released with these leaks of offshore documents and Panama Papers and secret, maybe this will begin to shed light on some of this.
Mm-hmm. Do you see like is there a chance also via these big huge leaks we have seen in the recent years, that there's a more sensitiveness concerning these issues when it comes to the funders and to the development banks?
Well, I think the increasing leaks showing the shadow underworld of banking and finance have definitely led to a higher profile for what we can only call the secret banking within the banks, because these financial intermediaries are like a secret banking system. They're opaque. You can't see inside them. And I think as the public has become increasingly aware of, alarmed at, and angry about the secret financial networks that drain capital and resources from all of our countries to the detriment of our taxpayers, I think that as that level of awareness and anger rises, it becomes more difficult to justify having a black box of a financial intermediary that has a secret operations management plan that secretly instructs them how to fulfill the public safeguard requirements.
Thank you. Any more questions for our experts? Otherwise, I would say thank you very much for attending this press conference, and we have also recorded it, so we will find a way to put it online so that people that couldn't take the time can have a look afterwards. And we of course have a lot of background material like here, but we will put it on our website of urgewald, www.urgewald.org, where you can find them, or you can of course approach us. You will find the data also on our website and on the invitation. Thanks so much, and yeah, so have a nice day.
Thank you.